Welcome to the podcast with Dr. Reenee Singh. She's a couples therapist or couples coach. I think she refers to herself as well because it's not just therapy, it's coaching, it's life skills. And I met Dr. Reenee just last weekend, and she works a lot with people of different cultures. So people that are now in a relationship, married, maybe just dating. And the cultural differences, the religious differences are so huge that they come to see her to help her give them the tools to overcome whatever those differences might be. Now, listen, I'm a married man. I've been married now. It's coming up to 13 years this year. And I can tell you, everyone who's married, I'm laughing as I say this because everyone who's married knows that being married is hard work. I describe it as it's like being like having a shop, having a business. You don't just open your business front doors and expect money to come in and things to be successful. You got to work at your business, same way like your physical and your mental well-being. You got to work at it all the time, even if you just do little bits here and there. That's what a relationship's like. That's my little bit of advice to all the youngsters out there about to get married. It's constant work. It's a bit like being a parent. It's constant work. You don't take your hands off the reins in that respect. And here is this therapist who is helping people to do that, to do just that. And being in it, like my point was, being in a relationship with someone who's the same faith as you, as I am, is hard work, requires constant work. So let alone someone who's from a completely different background, languages, the in-laws, their family, your family, them mixing, how do they mix? All of those things play a key factor. The world's changing all the time as well. So there's going to be more intercultural relationships, particularly with people that are proud of their Sikhi or their Muslim faith or their Hindu faith or their Jewish faith, whatever. If you're proud of that, and you should be proud of that, then you shouldn't have to give that up. And Dr. Reenee's got some advice for you. So we had a great chat. This is Dr. Reenee Singh on the Tommy Sandhu podcast, talking relationships. We are live and we are recording. So I want you to know that that's it. It's go time. Because I don't think you're the kind of person that needs much of a warm up. You're like, you're action ready all the time. Are you not?
Yes, I think I actually am action ready, partly because I'm so committed to my work and passionate about it that I'm just always ready to start.
Like a superhero. You're never really off duty, the suit's always on underneath. I'm not saying you're going to whip off that chutney, but if you whipped off that chutney, there'll be like a superhero outfit made of vibranium or something like that underneath. That's what I imagine. Here to rescue couples from the doom and gloom of misery in real life.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's one way of looking at it.
There you go. Well, it's my way. And I'm sticking with it. How are you, first of all? Are you okay? There you are as a couples therapist, checking that everyone else is all right. I'm going to check on you, Reenee. Do I call you Dr. Reenee? Do I use the full title?
Just call me Reenee. Just call me Reenee. Okay. That's absolutely fine.
Okay. How are you, Reenee? Are you well? Are you okay?
I'm actually really well, thank you.
Good. Yes. Why do you say, okay, see, look at that. Now I'm going to analyze you. You went, I'm actually really well. Like, despite everything, despite the world and my life, I'm actually really well. So
no, I think what I meant, yes. What I meant is that for a change, my own internal status of feeling really good, and that this is not always the case. There might be times when I feel, worn out or tired or overwhelmed, but for a change, I'm feeling really good is what I meant.
In the scope of human emotions, worn out and tired is okay. Like I would take that. If that is what determines not being so good, worn out and tired is all right. Because as we know, there's a lot more that can go wrong with someone's mind and state and, feelings and the way they fit into the world or the way they fit into themselves. But worn out and tired, that's on your own back, love. That's your fault. That's how much workload you're taking on. So you got no one else to blame for that apart from you. And that can be controlled, I suppose, to some extent.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. So I want to point out to everyone who won't know, but obviously we only met last Friday. Where is it now? It's now Tuesday. So we're only 5 days into our relationship, you and I.
Yes.
It's early days. We're still in the honeymoon period. But I was hosting the British Sikh Awards, and you won an award. And you're going to have to remind me, what was the award that you won in the end? It was for
Outstanding achievement of the year.
Oh my
And
word.
when I showed my son, my 16-year-old son, my award, he said, "So, but what was the achievement, Mum?" And I said, "Which of my many achievements?"
Yeah. How long you got? How long you
Yeah,
got? Let me narrow it down for you. I'll give you the bite-sized version.
yes.
But that's so that is your achievement, your contribution, your efforts in, I suppose, what would you call the field? What do I call it? So because it's not just well-being. What is it? How do you determine it?
Couples psychotherapy,
Right.
in fact, intercultural couples psychotherapy. So really
Right.
to help those couples who come from different cultural backgrounds, different faith backgrounds, different class backgrounds sometimes, to find a way of tolerating and celebrating the differences between them.
Right. Okay. That's deep. Straight away, what you're really saying is, we know there'll be some cultural differences here. There's a different way that you've both been raised, different way you
Yeah.
look at life, the way you may look at each other, and therefore the way you may conduct yourself in this relationship. And you, Dr. Reenee, are going to take all that on and fix it, or help them to provide them with the tools to fix it. Where do you
Well, that's
start?
absolutely right. It's the tools really, and you know when you think about especially couples at different stages of their lives, for example, just before they want to get married or make a commitment to be together, the kinds of pressures in terms of different faith backgrounds. Is one going to convert to the other's religion? Pressures from parents. Are they going to accept this union? Worries about the future, how to parent. Even just the very notion of what it means to be a couple might be completely different to people from two different backgrounds. The
Mhm.
idea of home, where is home? Where do they make a decision to live, especially if one is a migrant from a different country, you know? So these are sort of things that they really grapple with. And none of this is to pathologize intercultural couples because, you know, just the fact that they're from different cultural backgrounds doesn't mean that there's anything pathological or wrong with their relationship at all. In fact, if anything, can be really strong and very resilient. But it's just that they have unique challenges, and it's giving them a space where they can think together about these unique challenges and talk in a way that can feel really risky, maybe sometimes, and
Yeah.
try and find ways to resolve these differences between them. So that's what I provide. And I think and hope it's quite a sort of unique service.
It is though. It's niche, but it's amazing. That you have a whole career out of these niches. But maybe you could argue, actually, now that I say that it's niche, it's maybe not. Maybe because of the way the world is being thrown together and the melding pot of life. Sure, surely you're seeing a rise in mixed cultural marriages. What do you call it? Is it intercultural marriages, mixed
I
cultural? What's
Yes,
the correct term?
I call them intercultural, but I guess it could also be called cross-cultural or interethnic or interfaith or interracial, cross-cultural, cross-racial, any of
Oh,
these combinations. Yes.
as soon as you say the word cross, it feels like someone's going to be angry. It's cross cultural. Someone's crossed. They're crossing me. I'm crossing them. I'm reading into the language here. And so I like intercultural feels like that. Yeah. It's like we're woven into each other. It feels more kind of
Yes,
positive.
I
But this is,
agree.
but therapy, seeing someone like yourself, a doctor of kind of relationships and things like that, that's very American. That's not our desi way. We don't do these type of things, Hannah. No, no, no. But I mean, like this is you because you're now crossing different cultures by trying to educate these two cultures on the fact that there's a therapy culture out there, because that's not
So
something we buy
this,
into.
so this is a really good point. And actually, I have worked in India. You know, I worked in Delhi in independent practice. And things are changing. And a lot of my clients are South Asian, broadly speaking. And lots of them nowadays are based in India, and we'll have Zoom sessions from wherever, all over the world. So I think that it is something that families and couples are beginning to accept, the idea of therapy. But I agree with you that it is a sort of fairly alien or foreign concept and has to be kind of understood as not being part of people's ideas about how to get better, or the idea of talking to a stranger, talking to somebody who's not a family elder, talking to somebody who's not, at the Gurdwara or Mandir. or mosque is still quite alien to us culturally, you know. So
Mm,
one of my first tasks is to talk about talking, to help people to understand what talking means to them. And for intercultural couples, this is sometimes really important because they have different ideas about the value and the importance of talking. A part of this is gendered too. So a lot of my male clients, sorry to stereotype, but
okay.
lots of the husbands, lots of the male partners are not so into talking and communicating. You know,
No.
they want to be real men. They want to sort of sort this out by themselves, and the women then end up feeling quite shut out or cut off. You know, and so a lot of my work is to first to begin by creating a safe context to talk. You know. So it has to do with my relationship with both of them, assuring them that I'm neutral, that as an Asian, South Asian woman, I might be able to understand one of their points of view better than the other, but can we sort of find a way of talking that's respectful to both of them and neutral?
Yeah. When did that come about? What's that about when you say, because it is a man thing. It's a
Yeah.
me. I'm quite an open bloke. Like I talk a lot. I've got two sisters. I don't have any brothers. I come from a kind of communicatively kind of loaded house. We all talk and everyone, and I blurt out kind of how I'm feeling. I think it's the reason why I do what I do. So, but
Yes.
even still, when my wife goes, we need to talk about that, whatever it is, I go, oh God,
Yes, yes, yes.
I just don't want to. I
Yeah.
don't want to. I just feel like most of the time things will be fine. And what, but is that, I'm trying to work out what the root of that is. Is the root of that my blinkeredness to the problem, burying my head in the sand, or is it the bloke thing of are we just wired differently? What's behind that?
So if I were a psychoanalyst, and I'm not, but I do have a lot of respect for many psychodynamic and psychoanalytic ideas, I might say its origins are in your relationship with your mother and the fact that
Oh,
you boys especially are very attuned, I have two boys myself as well, so I do know, very attached, very attuned to how their mothers are feeling. And because their mothers are in a more powerful position, they do sort of, they can tread quite carefully around it. So, sort of, the idea of their wives or partners talking to them about anything that's terribly emotional might evoke some fairly primitive feelings of, I don't know, displeasing their mothers, making their mothers sad. You know, too much emotionality can feel quite difficult for a lot of men. But I'm stereotyping here, and I do have couples where it's exactly the reverse, which is also fascinating, you know, where the woman will say, "Oh, don't cry to the man, don't cry so much," you know. In my culture, men don't cry. So, especially with the white Western partner, a woman, a minority ethnic woman might say, you know, what you being such a sort of new man about? Why are you crying? You know, men don't cry. You're not supposed to
yeah.
cry. So it can work both ways, I guess.
So when people come to see you, I guess one of them has said to the other one, right, this is not working. You know, we got some issues here. And that in itself is a conversation before you would get to you part of that conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah, in what context do people sort of arrive at your doorstep? Kind of, I imagine with their bags packed, they're rain drenched, they're in a
Yeah.
miserable state, and they're like, help us,
Yeah.
relationship Poppins. It's like,
Yeah.
come,
Yes,
come and
yes,
make
yes.
this all go away.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think I guess I should also state that, you know, I don't just work with intercultural couples. I work with a range of couples. So often it's, you know, couples where one has had an affair. I also work with lots of families of all kinds. So I'm trained as a family
Okay.
therapist even before I became a couples therapist. So in terms of the referral process, which is a really essential part of understanding the problem, it can be in all kinds of ways. It could be the GP referred or the school referred for a child. But where intercultural couples go, what I find fascinating is in setting up the London Intercultural Couples Centre, most people come because they've Googled, you know, and they already define their problems as being of an intercultural nature. So whether it's problems with in-laws or problems with whether to convert or not to convert, or feeling like one of them is a subject of racism, and their partner isn't being supportive, they've already done a fair amount of thinking about these issues and have decided, hey, what we need is this thing called intercultural couples therapy. And I'm very happy that that's how they get to me. But I just do find it fascinating that we live in a world where Google and social media and, you know, all these things are so much around, Facebook and whatever, that people know what they want, and we have very informed consumers, really.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm being a bit self-reflective here because I'm thinking I'm married to a Sikh lady, girl. I don't know what to call her, girl. It feels weird to call her a lady because she
Woman. Yes.
woman. That's what she is.
Yes.
She definitely that. Well, I don't know. She's just a force. I wouldn't even call her a woman. I don't know what she is. She's the badass one in the relationship. That's for sure. And definitely the stronger one mentally. Definitely the more driven one. The more keep things in order and check one. And I think that's because I come from a sisterly house. Like I'm used to women running my world, and I'm more than happy to have that role in them. I'll be entertainment. You guys provide order and discipline, which frustrates us sometimes because I'm not as responsible as I should be. But that's a side thing. That's a whole other issue. What I mean is, I chose to marry a Sikh girl, and I wanted to marry a Sikh girl, and I went through the arranged-ish kind of process because I dated different girls with different background all around the world. Honestly, really, my dating passport has been stamped. No, I'm kidding. But meaning I've dated girls from different backgrounds. And then you realize it's hard bloody work making a relationship work when you've got different cultures. You know, and these girls never kind of made it into my kind of inner family circle and kind of met the family. I'm like, there's no way they could sit there with my boas, some of which have got a Cockney accent, wearing a suit, some of which are like, you know, full on Punjabi. You know, my tires, my uncle, my sisters, my mum and her doing her part in the corner. That would just, she'd be like, what is this? It's just too alien for them. And I just about managed my British Asianness. So I'm like, I can't be carrying you as a passenger through this. So it's terrible to say this, but I chose the Sikh path with my wife, well, wanting in a partner, because I just wanted an easier life. But all I knew is I thought, I've got a fancier. And I do. I fancy my wife to bits. So I'm like, if I fancy you, I can make the rest of the stuff work. But isn't that, was that a cop out? You know, because I'm effectively saying, no, what you're working at, I'm saying that's too hard work. I don't want that.
Yes. No, I think it sounds extremely sensible. And I think that it is a simpler option. And actually, the old literature shows that a lot of intercultural couple relationships are more likely to end in divorce. A lot more of the children were taken into care. That's in the past. I mean, things have changed. And I think that as people become more open to different cultures and more integrated into societies, there's less doom and gloom. And actually, I really meant what I said. I think that when intercultural couple relationships work, they actually in many ways are stronger than so-called monocultural couples, whatever that means. But because they have had to face so many challenges, that through that their relationship has become much stronger. If they overcome them, if they manage to overcome this, there's a way in which they really do. Their families are much closer and much closer knit, especially if the extended family doesn't accept them. But I do think that this is not just a question of making the right choice. I think that sometimes people don't have an option. You do fall in love with someone from a different cultural background. And then what do? This happens, and it happens with a lot of my clients. For example, I have a Muslim, at the moment I'm working with a Muslim Indian woman and her Black African boyfriend. And the thing is that, we talk about racism, but a lot of our Asian families are terribly racist.
Yeah,
So
hugely.
she would not have got such a bad reaction, even if it was a white man. But the fact that he's Black and Christian meant that it was, her parents made a huge fuss. But this couple was so much in love with each other that they actually waited. They waited like 5 years. They went on trying to get the parents on their side. And finally, she made the decision that she just had to be with this man, and that she was going to give up her whole family and her whole culture. And that, of course, has brought a huge backlash of sadness and bereavement for her. And it affects their couple relationship because she often blames him. If it wasn't for you, then I wouldn't be in this situation where I can't go to my sister's wedding, for example, even though he made no pretense of the fact that, how could he? It's visibly different from her. So yes, I don't think, I think that sometimes we just don't have a choice. People do fall in love with somebody from a different culture, and then they just have to make the best of it and the most of it.
So sacrifice. I just want to talk about sacrifice because there's a couple of things that I think link back to sacrifice. I think a relationship is a lot about sacrifice. Not only that,
Yes.
sacrificing your own time to support the other one. It's now two lives intertwined. Listen, I annoy myself. I let myself down, let alone what I must be like in a relationship when I'm going to be letting someone else down, and hopefully enriching her in many ways if I can. But I'm bound to disappoint because that's just the nature of humans and
Yes.
we're flawed. But I think you have to sacrifice things that you want to do for the betterment of a relationship. And here we're talking about sacrificing family, connections with loved ones for someone else. So are we saying for intercultural relationships to work, you you just got to give up a bit of yourself? Is that what it takes for them to work?
Yeah. I think that you do have to give up possibly more of yourself than you would do, with somebody from a similar cultural background. But the interesting thing is, I think that both partners give up something of themselves. And when I look at homes, I did this amazing research. I was part of an amazing research project a few years ago called "Enduring Love: Couple Relationships in the 21st Century." And it was um, a ESRC funded research project. Anyway, part of my task was to go into couples' homes and intercultural couples' homes and interview them. And I was always struck by the home. So there was one home I went into where I could have been in Delhi, and everything, the paintings on the walls and the smells from the kitchen. And I was just transported back home, really, for me.
Well,
And that was an Indian woman and an English man. But actually, I thought that they have both given up a lot. She has given up her country. She would rather live in India, and she's living here with him and her language and her connections with her family back at home. But he's also given up the idea of what a home means. And in fact, when his parents come to visit, in fact, they never come to visit because they feel that it's so alien. Um, and that's where the sort of racism comes in as well. They can't relate to what's going on in their sons' lives. So I don't think it's just the partner from a minority ethnic background, whatever that means, who gives up and makes sacrifices. I think both partners really make sacrifices, and give up their idea about what home is, what couple relationships are, in order to create this hybrid thing, which can be so powerful.
but that sort of preciousness, then letting go, okay, of the things that you're precious about. And sometimes those precious things probably don't really matter that much, but you feel like they do because then you're trying to stand up for yourself because you're told that, hey, you need to be your own person, and you can't let another couple, another person influence you. And I think there's always that feeling of, I know when I've taken the piss basically too far, and I'm like, okay, like I'm away this week on Thursday and Friday night. I'm like, okay, note to self, Saturday morning you better be up with the boys dealing with stuff because I need to kind of get back because I've left it all to her. So things like that, like you gotta, I think you have to be tuned into that. But that, that I suppose, yeah, being precious about those little moments, you're really, I don't know, it's like you're saying let go, but then I'm trying to work out how someone can do that, how someone can let go, because you're like, hold on, I'm losing myself in
Yeah.
this intercultural relationship. And I think it's that scares people, doesn't it?
It is, and one of the things I recommend and suggest to couples is they do have separate cultural spaces. So is it okay for them to go and visit the in-laws without their partner? Is it okay for them to go to the gurdwara, go to the mosque without their partner, go to church, whatever? So the notion that you have to do everything together, I think for intercultural couples really, really doesn't work. I mean, on the one
Yeah.
hand, I think it's great that you can celebrate Diwali and you can celebrate Christmas, that you can celebrate, every festival that we have here, in the UK. But at the same time, could we also have just those moments when somebody can go away and have a meal, even, have some food that really belongs to their culture and that makes them feel so much at home?
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that actually it's important in any relationship to have some separateness. But I think in intercultural couple relationships, maybe it's even more important. Can I go back and visit my parents, without having my partner around all the time, because it's just too much negotiation, too much reading different cultural meanings. Can I just have some time off and go off and be in my own cultural milieu without having the other person around to look after, really?
And is that not frowned upon? Is that not creating a crack? Is that not celebrating the differences rather than uniting?
Well, if it's negotiated, then it isn't. And that's where something like intercultural couples therapy, not that I'm marketing my services here, but that's where it
Yeah.
comes in really useful. Because if you do this in an act of defiance or a reaction, in a reactive space, then it's not helpful, of course. But if you do it because you've sat down and talked about it and thought about it and said, look, I know this might feel difficult, but I really do have to be with my own family, just me with them for a while. And it doesn't mean I love you any less. And it means that I will come back after these 5 days or 10 days. But this is what I need to do for myself, So.
Okay. I hope you don't mind me asking this, but sometimes when I look at like the personal trainer that I'm going to use, you want to know that he's got the body and the build that you want, one day. And I would think that's a good way of doing it. I think, yeah, he's that kind of build. What's your relationship status? Where are you at? That's what I'm getting at with that little
So
tee.
So I am in an intercultural couple relationship, and I have been quite open about that. In fact, when I set up this center, my husband and I then were on the front page of the Observer on a feature about intercultural couple relationships. But I was thinking earlier on when you asked me about the simplicity. Yes, of course, it is much simpler to be in a so-called monocultural couple relationship. But I think that sometimes we're sort of hardwired as well. So my father was Sikh. He's now no longer in this world. He was a wonderful man. I was very attached to him, but he married a Hindu woman. My mother is Hindu.
Right.
And so I always had the experience of interfaith, intercultural relationships. My sister was married to a Jewish man, and my younger sister has a Muslim husband. So I think for us, that was the norm. To think about cultural faith differences was the norm. So it would have been very strange if I hadn't followed through with that pattern.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's hence my fascination and interest in intercultural couple relationships. I think really stems from my own experiences growing up as well. And I know that Hindu and Sikh are not that different in some ways. And we always had a photograph of Guru Nanak on my parents' bedroom wall, and there was a lot of tolerance. My mother is a devout Hindu. So she used to do all her pujas and everything. And my father was extremely tolerant towards that.
Yeah, and see, sorry, I'm going to slightly broaden this, change kind of the tact on this now, because I think, pre-partition maybe, or whatever you want to call it, there was a lot more tolerance of religions and cultures within South Asia. And I'll say that because it wasn't Pakistan then, it was just, a bigger India. And so it was different. And I wonder whether, partition and colonialism and all those things have played a part. But the fact is, we are where we are, right? We can debate that all day long, but we are where we are. But the similarities are huge. The cross-cultural ways in which we live our life, food and respect for parents and elders, which is why I think the Jewish faith and most Asian faiths are so closely linked. Even the Irish kind of way, the kind of respect for the mother figure and the power of the woman in the house, very Punjabi, the men and their whiskey, or the banter. There's a lot in life that we can pull people together on. And I'm not just saying this to play the righteous card. I love that about life. That's what I live for as an entertainer, as a broadcaster, is I think, no. Yes, we can talk about what's different, but let's hang on to, celebrate and magnify all the things that we have in common, because a lot of the stuff that makes us different, it doesn't mean nothing. It's just the way we face when we pray, the type of head covering you have when you are in a religious place of worship. It's effectively saying the same thing.
I think that's absolutely right. It's both and, isn't it? How can we recognize and respect differences, but how can we embed those differences in the commonalities and similarities that make us all humans? And, in a sense, we all have attachments, we all die and live, and there's a lot that's common between all of us of any culture or faith. And that's what I guess intercultural couples can kind of tap into. What are the things that keep them together?
And what about even people that are like from the same faith, but someone might be a bit more hardcore than the other one? You know, like it's
Yeah.
funny
So I
because
do have a lot of couples like that.
yeah. So what do you say there? Do you tell one to calm down, the other one to up their game, or I mean, what do you say?
So I had I'm thinking of a number of different couples. Some of them are sort of very observant. One partner is really observant Jewish, the other's not so observant, and that can become quite problematic. I'm thinking in particular of a couple I worked with where one was, they were both Bangladeshi, but one had grown up in the UK and the other had come. She had married him from Bangladesh, and then he had moved here. And that was really difficult. That was problematic because she spoke very little Sylheti. He spoke almost no English. And part of my work was to sort of try and get them to understand each other. And they also had really different views on parenting. But over a period of time and through the course of the work, I worked with an interpreter, and it was a male Bangladeshi interpreter who used to sit right next to him and interpret for him. And then by the end of the work, he was so fed up that he enrolled himself for English classes. And even though he'd lived here for 15 years, he hadn't done that before. And he was speaking in fluent English by the end of our work
Oh
together.
wow.
So it's really quite interesting. So I think he became more British, and he became more like her. And she was actually more of a devout Muslim than he was. She used to wear the hijab, and she decided to stop wearing the hijab. So they both changed and shifted, and they both moved into a position that was more similar, really, to each other.
Okay. Yeah, and that's really in the nature of like, look, that's to make this relationship thing work. Like,
Yes.
so sorry, when you said that she stopped wearing the hijab, I felt a bit sad. If I'm honest, I'm like, oh no, like,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't. I say this to my wife all the time. I said, I'm not out to change you.
Yeah.
If I see things in you which I think will give you an easier life, a better life, her approach to things, how much she analyzes or worries or runs around after things that don't necessarily reward or enrich her spiritually or whatever it might be, I'll be like, look, I think that's a waste of energy. That relationship's not going to, but I'm like, I'm not out to change you. I just want to point these things out. The fact that this lady had to stop wearing a hijab, I'm like, oh no, that I suddenly, literally, I physically feel like, oh, that's not the way. That doesn't feel right. But can you see why I instantly feel that way?
Yeah, I absolutely can. And, I was a little bit dismayed as well, like, why do you have to do that? Or even for the husband, why do you have to kind of give up so much of your heritage? But in a sense, that came from them. And then I had to ask myself, was there something in my westernized approach that's kind of making them do these things? Do they think it's going to please me in some ways, please other professionals? But I do think that some of these changes were really coming from them. And there were other ways in which they did hang on to their cultural religious identities. So it isn't as if they sort of, gave them all up, but they just sort of chose which bits to hang on to. And I think that's also often part of my work. Which bits of one's cultural religious identities can you hang on to and be proud of and be associated with? And which bits is it easier to sacrifice for the sake of the couple relationship, for the sake of the family, for the sake of integrating, really, in a sense.
Final thing, because I know you have to go anyway, but it was more to say, how long until we don't need you? How long? Because the world's melding into this one big pot, and people are traveling more, and the places that were what's the word, approachable are now very much becoming residential, and it's opening up to the rest of the world and business. So what we are is going to surely become irrelevant in a couple of generations.
Okay, so it's a very, very good question, and I guess it requires a lot of unpacking and thinking about. I think that, I hope that there's always a need, and it may not be called therapy. In fact, I sometimes call what I do coaching or training, but I hope there's always a need for us to learn how to recognize and respect differences. That there's some tools and techniques, which I haven't really touched on, but lots of things that I use in my practice that can help people to understand the other better, and that this doesn't, every time I teach about intercultural couple relationships, people often say, my husband and I are from the same cultural background, but we might as well be from different planets.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is even about just helping partners from different genders, sometimes even from the same gender. How do we understand the other, I guess? And I hope there's always a place for all of us, whether it's someone from a different country in our business diverse team. So it's more like diversity training, whether it's somebody, a colleague whom we're stuck with who has different ideas and beliefs about something. I hope there's always room in learning how to communicate better, in learning how to empathize with the other, in learning how to understand the influences on somebody we live with or work with. So I hope there's always space for this.
Okay, we're going to keep working. It's a journey and all that, not a destination. We'll just keep working at it.
Yes.
Dr. Reenee, thank you so much. I knew this would be a good chat, and I'd love to get you on again because I feel like we're just scratching the surface, and there'll be more.
That's right. No, and thank you, Tommy. I mean, it's so thought-provoking. It's actually given me lots of thoughts and ideas about how to work better and how to write better. So thank you very much.
I'm glad I can help. I'll send you my bill. And no, it's more than a pleasure. More than a pleasure. It means a lot. Have a great one. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch up real soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wait. Before you go, I need to ask you to make sure you have hit the subscribe button and you are listening to these podcasts regularly. So if they're on YouTube, if you're watching this now, lucky you get to see my face as well as hear the voice. Please do hit the bell button and hit the subscribe thing and get involved with the whole channel so you can stay up to date with what's going on. It really does make a difference for us. We then know where our subscribers are, the kind of episodes you're listening to, and then I can give you more of that kind of stuff, more of the good stuff. You want more good stuff? Hit subscribe to this podcast right now and follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Just go find the Tommy Sandhu podcast and welcome it into your life.